Hi, and welcome to the Hancock Creative Podcast. I'm Shawn Hancock.
And I'm Missy Hancock.
And I'm Vinton Bain.
Today we're talking about avoiding usury.
Usery?
Usury.
Usery.
Yeah.
Usury.
All right.
Usury.
So what does usury mean, Shawn?
Well, Vinton, usury, at least in my definition, is when someone takes advantage of another person by using them in some way or another.
It also happens to be in the Urban Dictionary's way of not just your...
Whatever.
Right.
Whatever.
Yeah.
I can be urban.
You are so urban. You are downright urban.
So would you say that that's what a usury means?
Usury?
It usually means that.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Everyone just turned this podcast off.
Click. Because they have a little knob. Click. Let me describe two types of people. There are those types of people who see opportunity in others. And there are those types of people who see opportunity with others. Did you catch the difference?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
One of them's in, one of them's with.
With.
There are those who elevate themselves by the work of other people, and there are those who elevate everyone by the works of their own hands. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Two different types of people.
So you're saying there are jerks and there are not jerks.
Basically. That's what it comes down to. No, I think that if you don't have the eyes to see, it is very deceptive to tell the difference between these two people.
Oh, yes.
There's a person who looks at you like an asset.
Yeah.
And I like to call them asshats. Not the asset, but the asshat.
I get what you did there.
You see what I
I
did?
see what you did.
Okay, and then there are those people who look at you as a person with talent. So one looks at the talent
And says, how can I use that?
yeah, and the other looks at the person and sees the talent in that person, but sees the person first.
And says, ooh, I want to work with them.
Right, exactly. So it can be hard to tell the difference because both of them are giving you an opportunity.
Yeah. Well, and the asshat is, we will be referred to as the asshat from this moment forward,
Henceforth.
is often flattering. It's not like
Sure,
they're not
yeah.
like, wow, you're really great.
And if you're not careful, they will use their manipulative witchcraft on you with their compliments and stuff, which
Yes.
I am really repelled by that.
You're like,
Well, and sometimes those people can be assets to you. They can be beneficial to you for a time.
For a time, yeah.
And sometimes they're even necessary. Like we've talked about breaking into certain industries where you have to kind of go
Right.
with their flow before you try to change the system.
Yeah.
And that would be a situation where that might be the case, where you would have to let one of these people that are trying to use you help you until you can deviate from them.
Then you become the user.
but often
Mm-hmm.
though, but here's what I'm saying. Often the people and the industries and the parts of industries that you want to participate in, they're wanting to bring together a bunch of people who have great ideas so that everyone puts in what they have and all of us together are moved forward.
Right.
And
It's all,
bettered.
everyone's
It's
elevated.
everyone's elevated. Usually the users, it's really not that great of opportunity because they're the only one who's going to be bettered by it or really benefit.
But I mean, I would agree that there are seasons and times when you just have to have the work. You just have to have the job but here's the key is know what you're getting into and know the user and know that you are there for a short time, because if you went into a situation where you were being used, you would not want to be there long term. That would just be short term to solve your current financial situation or whatever.
Agreed.
So I have probably a longer list than it needs to be of what to look for in a workplace, of questions you should ask if you are a creative person going into like a job interview or whatever. you're looking at a place to work. And these are some questions I think you should ask yourself so that you know if you're getting yourself into a usury situation. So
The first one is, do these people look like ass hats?
Yes.
do they have hats that look like asses?
Or are their faces like asses wearing hats?
Are the ass faces?
That's always how I imagine the ass hat. Just a big ass with a hat on. Okay, let's go.
Are we talking about like a donkey, or are we talking about like
No,
a hat?
I'm talking about a butt, like the big crack right down the center with a hat on it. That's what I picture when I hear the word ass hat. What do you picture?
No, I just, we just keep talking about ass. So I'm thinking, I just start seeing maybe we're talking about a donkey.
No, that's boring.
Because I already, the first thing I see was an ass on your head, like the ass is the hat.
Oh, an ass hat. That makes more sense than what I
But
see.
then I started thinking about donkeys.
Yeah, I think it comes from when people say that you have your head up your own ass.
Oh, your head. Oh, I never knew where it came from.
But it could be an ass mask. Like,
Where is this
Face.
podcast
We're gonna
going?
Face
coin
plant,
that. Right there. We're coining that. Your head got creative. Ass mask. Use it.
Hashtag.
Hashtag ass mask.
question number 1.
If people didn't turn off the podcast by now, that was the point where they did.
Question number 1.
Okay.
Is this place a place that uses artists for their own gain, not the artist's gain, but the gain of the employer, at the expense of the artist?
That's the clincher there. At the expense of the artist. Because, of course, they're always using the artist for their own gain.
Well, yeah. I mean,
But-
if you're in the commercial art world,
Yeah.
that's your
how it
job.
works.
That's what
Yeah.
you do. But there's a difference between working for someone who's got you in
Sucking.
mind to benefit everyone involved and benefit the company
the world
at
by
the
putting
expense.
something awesome out there, right?
Right.
Yeah, the key is at the expense of the artist rather
Yeah.
than benefiting themselves and the people around
Right.
them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Question 2. In what way are the artists appreciated in this environment? Are they well paid? Do they have opportunities? And here's an important one. Are they promoted?
Yeah.
Question 3.
Explain why that's important. Because
Well,
I think,
I
are you
will.
going to go over this? Okay.
No, I will, but I think some of my other questions may
Okay.
go into that. But basically, if they do, who cares? But
Because we like
Okay.
to make you.
here's why that's important. Is an artist promoted to the next level? In other words, so if you have an art department, is the head of the art department an artist that was promoted to that position? And that's a
Or
given.
an artist at all.
Or an artist, but that's a given, okay? So, but does an artist have the ability to move into another position that's not art related? You know what I'm saying? So, like, if they've given an opportunity for an artist who shows leadership qualities and these other things to become a head of a department somewhere, maybe it's not art related, maybe it is, maybe it's marketing, maybe it's something else, maybe it's whatever. I don't know. I really don't know. I mean, I'll have examples of my experience here in a little bit, but if that is a yes, that did happen, then that's a good sign.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if none of the artists are ever promoted to anything above what they do, then they're only looked at as the thing that they do. So if you're a graphic designer and you never have the opportunity to be the head of another department or head of your own department or anything like that, then you're valued only as a graphic designer and not as a person. So in other words, it's more important for them to keep you where you are than to promote you, because they see you as a commodity instead of a human being.
Right. You basically have to ask, are you being stifled or are you being furthered? You have room to
Right.
grow.
Right. Yeah. Do you have room to grow? I think that's probably my other questions, or one of my other questions. So what is the attitude towards the artist from those in charge? Do they see you as a person or do they see you as an object? Are there any working artists or creatives as the head of department or in charge? I think that we covered that. Are artists valued as people or just as the talent they provide? And so we're covering all that in this conversation. So So yeah, it's like you basically look at it and say, how are the people viewed? Are they viewed as people with potential, or are they viewed as
Dollar signs.
yeah, or just the talent they can provide?
Yeah.
So you would think, okay, well, I mean, a business person, they're just hiring you to do that job. And so that being the case, that's not a preferable place to work. Preferable place to work is a place that is building everyone up, elevating everyone, looks at the person as a person instead of a person as a thing, as an object to use.
Yeah.
As a tool. All right. So this goes into the area that you want me to be cautious about how much ranting I can. You want me to control myself. That's what I'm saying.
Yes.
I mean, that's a segment of this show, right? Shawn's ranting.
Oh God, I hope not. I hope not. I hope
Welcome
people
to
don't think
Shawn's soapbox.
that. Just a little bit of a history story in my life and ours, in how or when I started to see this usury thing in myself back many years ago. It happens all the time. People just do it naturally. But we were attending a convention, and a friend of ours was there as well. And I ran into a guy that I knew from previous years before. And I was working on a theatrical project, and my head was really in that world, and I was thinking a lot about it and blah, blah, blah. And then, so I ran into this guy, and he was telling me all this stuff about what he was doing, with audio or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And so naturally, because my head was in trying to create this theatrical show or whatever, I thought to myself, oh man, this guy I could maybe use this guy to help me do my show. Because,
this
he
guy
knows,
could cover the audio.
Yeah, he could be the sound man or whatever, He could help me do the audio thing or whatever. And so I was expressing this at lunch with our friend, and she said, isn't it weird how whenever you are working on a project and you meet people and you're always thinking how you can use them to help you do your thing or whatever. And I can't remember how she phrased it exactly. But I felt, and she didn't mean it this way, but I felt like that reflected my attitude towards people, and I didn't like what I saw in myself.
Yeah.
And I don't think she meant,
She may very well have just been talking about synchronicity and how, oh, wow, isn't it amazing when you're working on something, how all the pieces come together and all that. But, I mean, the truth is, and yeah, that's true. That's awesome. That does happen. But your motive, it's everything's motives. And I always, that quote I love, Charles Finney, motive can either sanctify or defile any action. Right. It's like if your motive is to use someone, it's like, oh, I bet they could do my thing with me. They could help me do my thing.
And yeah, I mean, you get excited about that or whatever, and that seems natural and normal, and a lot of times it's fine. It just depends on your motivation. My motivation was not good. My motivation was I can use this guy.
Yeah.
How can I rope this guy into this situation? You know what I mean? And I think that's the case a lot of times with people. They're just not thinking about their own motivation in it.
Yeah.
And really, when you're working with non-creative people, you have to understand that they are really ignorant about creativity and how it works, and they're ignorant about artists. And so you have to sometimes do some education. I worked with a lady who she spent most of her time educating people. She was a dancer working in the church environment, and she had to spend a lot of time explaining to people how dance worked and what was important and all this. And it sometimes seemed like she was just going overboard, but quite frankly, people were ignorant and they didn't know. So she saw it as her job, her responsibility as the artist, as the creative person and the head of what she was doing, to educate people. And I really felt like that was really important.
And if there is a world where usury is rampant, it's the church.
Right.
So because they feel like it's for a higher purpose or whatever.
Right. And that's where my rant would come in.
Yeah.
But there is
insert rant here.
Yeah. But I'll try not to. But here is what everyone needs to understand about the church, especially the church in America. And that is that churches are wannabe corporations anymore. And we had a friend many years ago who got a job at a church as a graphic designer, and she felt like this would be a safe, friendly, loving environment.
I think working for a church will be nice. The people show love, and it'll be.
Yeah, it'll be a nice place to work. And no, she was as wrong as she could be, because that's not really how churches work often. Now, I'm not going to say every one of them are evil, but a lot of them are. Quite frankly, behind the scenes, there's some bad-hearted people,
or just very selfish,
and also just ignorant about the arts, and so they're users.
At the very least, misguided.
Yeah. And I don't want to say, a lot of good things happen in church because there's good people in churches. But from my perspective, the system of church is flawed. It's not a good system. And so anyway, so that's something that you have to know going into, if you're going to work for a church, is that they're often usury people out of ignorance. And you can teach them, you can educate, but you also have to run a risk of looking like, I don't know, a know-it-all or something. I don't know what.
Well, I think in general, when you're an artist and you have friends who know that you do a certain art, when you say you're a graphic designer and friends see, oh, you did that design, you did that poster for that company, will you whip this up for me? And they just think there's this ignorance of the effort that goes into what you do. Mm-hmm. And they think you can just like whip it out real quick in 10 minutes, this thing that you took you all day, and that some company may have paid you hundreds of dollars to do. And they're like, hey, you're my friend, just whip out that poster for me real quick. And it's like, that's not really how this works.
Yeah. And that's how the church views things. And that's a lot of times that's where, because the church will use volunteers. And so they're used to not paying people. Yeah. And they're also used to not paying people very well, because you should, from their perspective, want to devote your time or devote your services to the Lord. And that's well and good. And I did that for years and was happy to do that. But when I felt like it became usury, then I felt like I was being taken advantage of. And so thankfully there are churches that do pay well, and you just have to, and they are people that will elevate the whole group of people, but you have to look for that. And
don't assume that will be there.
Right. But you have to have the eyes to see it. You have to be cautious about it, because it really is a real situation where you are used all the time. And I think probably a lot of times the musicians are used because they're used every single week. And who ministers to them? They're ministering, or doing their thing, but where do they get fed? A lot of our being fed or being nourished in the church comes from the worship service. And that's the artist, up there, the musician. And sometimes churches can't change them out. And so they're the same person every time. So where do they go? Mm-hmm. And so you can find yourself in a situation, and I've seen the sound people, the sound guys, they get used and worn out. And where do they go to be fed? Where do they go to be nourished creatively? Because the non-creatives don't know how to nourish the creatives, because the creative people use the arts to nourish the non-creative people. But the non-creative people don't know how to nourish creative people.
Mm-hmm. Often, yeah.
I just saw an article earlier today speaking on how we as a society don't value our musicians.
Right.
And we just see them as, oh, they get up there and play guitar. They like playing guitar. Give me your music. That's great. I like listening to it. Let me listen to it for as cheap as possible or as free. Let me get it on my Spotify. And I'll listen to an ad or two so I can listen to your whole album. But we don't think about how many hours it takes to write a song, how many hours it takes to record and to master, and all the takes that they have to do to get it just right. And then all the work that goes into producing and putting those CDs out, the vinyl out, or even just the digital out, and finding places to market it, and then having to go on tour because that stuff costs money and you have to raise money for it. So you have to go on tour and drive around a van that's going to break down 3 times on you, and you're going to have to buy a new van and new equipment because your strings are going to break, your guitar is going to break.
Right.
And you're putting in this full-time career, and we're just like, hey, can I just stream your music? Do you have a place I can just stream it? Can I just $5 for a download? That seems like a lot.
Yeah. Well, and then you're treated like a bum when it's all said and done.
Yeah.
By a lot of people.
And I think it's because there's this idea of, you're doing what you enjoy. Why should I pay you for that? Just give me your music. You enjoy it, don't you?
Okay. Last belly bitch. Okay. So I had the unfortunate pleasure unpleasure to fire a volunteer one time because the work she was doing was not up to par for the church that was not paying her. And so,
And I really think it was a stylistic thing, personally. But
well, okay, so I'll tell you what's going on. So this lady was, not hired, but she was asked to paint a room in the children's area or whatever, do it like a mural around the whole wall, all the walls.
because
in the room.
murals, they're hardly any work at all. I think it's reasonable to ask someone to do that.
For free.
Yeah,
Yeah.
of course.
And
when normal murals done in cities or people are paid, tens of thousands of dollars to do those, and obviously it takes a lot of supplies and a lot of work.
I don't know what you're talking about. Those are obviously done by vandal graffiti artists that just come in the middle of the night and do that, right?
That's how we get billboards too.
Yeah, vandals in the middle of the night.
That's the real graffiti that should be outlawed.
So
Different topic.
So anyway, so this lady, she spent hours and hours and hours on this mural. And so the church leadership, in particular, the children's pastor at the time, was kind of a spineless turd woman. And she wouldn't talk to her directly about it. And so I ended up somehow getting roped into talking to her about it. And so eventually I had to sort of, quote unquote, fire this lady. And I was on staff, and I wasn't just some random citizen.
But still, that situation sucks. It's like, hey, you're not the one that has the problem with this person, but will you go tell them to fix it?
Yeah,
instead of
well,
me telling them.
I happened to be doing the room next door, and so that's how somehow I got roped into it. So anyway, of course, this was horrible. This was, she left the church, and it was a horrible, traumatic experience for her to leave a church that she loved for years, and there's a lot of other stuff going on. But basically, this was a terrible position for a volunteer to be put in who's, first of all, some research needed to be done about her style. And secondly, for that kind of work, she should have been compensated something.
Yeah.
I was doing the room, but I was also on staff, so I was doing it during work hours too. So it's like, some of the time I was being paid and sometimes, I wasn't. But this lady wasn't paid at all. Mm-hmm. And that sort of thing happens all the time at churches. And you do not want to put yourself in that situation. You should value your own abilities as an artist to never put yourself in a situation like that.
Well, and this touches on the church thing especially, but also going back to when friends don't understand what work goes into your art and they ask you to do things.
Yeah.
As artists, a lot of us are pretty nice people. I mean, obviously you're going to have the jerk people who aren't and don't ever do anything for anybody. But overall, people are usually somewhat nice and want to be liked by their friends. And usually it's their friends asking, or, their church where they go and they believe in this thing. And so they ask, and they feel obligated. We feel obligated to give of our art. So when someone asks, we're like, yeah, it's a lot of work. I guess I'll do it for you. And we end up staying up all night working on these free projects and wearing ourselves out because we want to be nice to people.
And then to be greeted with, oh, that's not really what I was thinking.
Right. Almost every time you give something for free, the person's going to come back with, oh, what about this?
Yeah.
How about this one? Can you change this? Can you just do, you know what? Your style's not really working. Can you, here, copy this piece of art that I found online.
I've discovered, and this was probably not 100% true every time, but I've discovered that a lot of times the higher the price you charge someone, the less complaining they have.
Yeah.
I mean, that's true.
Well, yeah.
Because if you give it away for cheap, then somehow they feel obligated to want more from you. I don't know what the science, philosophy behind it.
I don't know. I mean, I think
Psychology,
possibly they think, oh, well, this was so cheap, it must not be very good. Here, let me help you.
Well, I think so I think that probably does play into it. But I think it has to do with how they perceive you, how professional you are. I think so. What you're saying, yes, that's true. But if I tell somebody the price is, a lot, I'm not going to throw a number out, but, because I don't know what job it is, but let's say that, for X job, a high price would be $500.
Okay.
And and if I throw out a price like, yeah, I'll do that for $100,
Yeah.
then and a lot of it has to do with what they had in their mind already.
Yeah.
And if the number is lower than what they had in mind, then they look at you like you're not as professional as they thought you were. And so therefore, the work that you do is not as good as they thought they were going to get.
And if you're like lowballing it is higher than they were thinking, you don't want to work for that person.
No, you
because
don't.
they're going to just be like, oh man, I mean, I'm paying you $100. And it's like, yes, for $500 of work. But they're, they
Right.
feel like they're already stretched. So,
Well,
just
in that
don't work
in
for
that
person.
situation, then whatever you do couldn't possibly be good enough,
Yeah.
because, they don't, I don't know. But anyways, it's a weird psychological thing happening between the client and you, the artist. But
Hold on. I think this whole podcast that you came up with is about me asking you for artwork, isn't it?
it is not.
Over the past couple weeks, I've asked you for a couple things. I just thought it was really funny.
What you're asking me for is like nothing. It takes me like 2 minutes to make.
I don't know how to use
think you're just
Illustrator. So when I need something in Illustrator done, I look at Shawn and go, please help. Please, dear God, help me.
No.
Except for you record everything and edit it.
Yeah, how much have I paid you for these podcasts? Nothing. So now that everybody knows our secrets. No, so I mean, don't give it away. Understand that you are valuable. And I do see artists who think they're really worth a lot and they, overprice themselves. But hey, let them overprice themselves. So what? If they get paid for it, so what? But you don't have to underprice just because they overprice.
Yeah.
You should value yourself and do some research and find out what the going price is, then make it on the higher end,
Yes.
just to be safe.
Yeah.
Because I guarantee you will want clients that are willing to pay the higher price than clients that are willing to pay the low price, because those clients are almost always terrible clients.
Yeah.
Well, and there's something to be said, and I don't know too much about this. I can't talk at length about it, but there's something to be said about undercutting the art community around you, where you come into an art community where, it's like, I'm just going to throw out random numbers. None of this is true or honest, but let's say a photo session is about $50 and you come in and you go, well, if everyone else is charging $50, I'm going to charge $20. And that kind of cripples the artist community around you, because $20 isn't going to pay the actual artist's bills. And now you've made it to where they have to charge less to compete with you.
Right, yeah.
And you're not going to last at $20.
Yeah.
You'll do
You're
that
gonna
for
learn.
like
Yeah,
a couple
you'll-
weeks.
yeah,
and
you'll
then you go,
burn
oh
out.
shit, this sucks.
Yeah.
You'll burn out. You can't pay your bills or whatever.
Yeah.
I've heard
I know.
a few horror stories, and I don't want to necessarily repeat them. I don't want to pull anyone out here, but of people in our local artist community doing this, and the other artists around them going, what the hell? I have to pay my bills, and now no one's hiring me because this guy's over here saying, well, I'll just do it for free because it gets my name out there. It's like, yeah, I wish I could do it for free. I have bills to pay.
Well, that's one thing I wanted to talk about. I'm so glad you said that, because the concept of doing things for free for experience and to get your name out there. And there's this like weird idea in the public, the general population's brains, that artists need exposure. So, hey, I got a really great opportunity for you. Could you do caricatures, right? Could you come and do them free at this festival that we have going? And young, in particularly young, inexperienced artists will often go, yeah, okay, yeah, I'll do that. And I mean, they're just beaten up by it.
Yeah, at what point does it stop being exposure? Like, I mean,
Yeah,
if everyone
right.
thinks of it that way, then no one's ever going to get
But
paid.
what
Here's the
what
deal.
you're exposing yourself to is being cheap.
Yeah, you're showing the world that your art isn't worth anything.
Okay, so you can charge more and then spend that extra money on marketing, and then you get your exposure. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know. That's easier said from, I'm not.
Well, but
A
what you
business very
get,
good
what
at
you
it,
get with that kind of exposure is you get more free jobs. Because people go,
They'll line
how much
up.
did you pay
Right.
for that?
Yeah.
How much
Which
did they
is
charge?
why-
Well, they did it for free. Oh, maybe
I just heard someone was telling me, and I don't know if this is something they came up with or something they actually do, that if they do like a free job, if they do a favor for a friend, they write up a contract that says, if anyone asks, you paid me $1,000 to do this.
Right. Yeah.
So that when they do something free
So you
in a
agreed to
contract,
lie
it
for
says that you agreed to pay $1,000, but then there was actually no money exchanged, but it's there written down. So if anyone asks, it's like, oh, I paid them $1,000 to do that. And so then you get past that hurdle. There you can do a favor for somebody,
Right.
or, force some kind of exchange without it coming back to
But
bite
the
you.
value has been set.
Yeah, the
you
value
know?
has been set.
And so whether you actually got paid that much or not, the value is X amount. And I think that's probably the majority of the problem, is that the client doesn't know the value of what you're doing. I did learn a lesson from my dance teacher friend when I was director of a fine arts school. It sounds really great, doesn't it, that I was a director of something? But we found out, or I found out, she told me this, that if you give classes away for free,
Oh, yeah.
the student does not value the class and they won't show up. So we always had these scholarship students who, through other means, the classes were paid for or whatever. And those students,
Did work study.
well, yeah, I mean, some of the scholarships were work scholarships. Those were fine.
Yeah.
But whenever you just basically gave it away, they didn't have to do anything for the class. They didn't show up to class.
Yeah.
They didn't value the class. And I don't know what it is psychologically, but that's the case. And so it's like, if you do not set in their mind value of your service, then they won't value it.
Yeah.
Or they'll decide for themselves what it's worth.
Well, and these issues are so weird. And I mean, these are like weird waters or whatever. That's not the right word. What is it?
Terrain, or what are you asking?
Yes,
what are you
weird
saying?
terrain, strange terrain, choppy waters. I don't know. This is unusual, or this is difficult for artists, because for a lot of artists, because you start bringing money into art, and it's
Right.
like, I don't know what to do. And we're certainly not saying don't ever do anything for free. I mean, if there's a street festival in your town and you're like, oh, I'm all about this, and I want to do this. This is my thing. This is what I'm offering to my community. Great.
Well, it
but
has to
don't, that's your offering. Don't allow someone else to steal an offering from
right,
you.
right.
You
Well,
know?
and I would say that if you benefit something from it, then you can do that. You can give it away if there's some exchange for your benefit. Like, I learned a lot from volunteering my time doing stage production stuff.
Yeah.
And so it's like, I was kind of in school and I learned a ton of,
And you worked long
and
hours.
I worked a lot of hours. I gave a lot of hours away for free, but I did get something in return for it. And so
Yes.
I'm thankful for that. And so I don't feel like that those experiences were bad. I love those experiences because I got something in return. And so in the case of when you're giving away something for free and you're getting something in exchange for it, then you are getting paid. There is a value to it. You are getting paid something for
Yeah,
it.
there's an exchange.
But after you've learned all there is to learn and you're still giving it away for free, then you're no longer getting something in return for it. And so then you're getting used in that scenario.
Well, I think the point of all this is that, and the truth behind it is that most artists don't know the value of their work. They don't
Right.
know what their value is for whatever they do. And we're not here necessarily to tell you, here, you're worth this much, $10
Right,
or $20
yeah,
for
yeah.
this or whatever. You have to decide that. You have to come to that by looking at the people around you and what you do. And it's a difficult process, let me tell
And
you.
then you should, let me just insert real quick, keep your thought, but you should not undervalue you should assume that you're better than you think you are.
Yeah, you are
Okay,
always going to undervalue yourself.
Yeah.
That's guaranteed. So look at people around you that love you and care about you and feed into you as an artist and go, what do you think I should charge for things? And what do you think I'm worth? And they're going to tell you more than you think, and you should go with them and not what you think most likely.
Yeah, and ask other artists. Most of the time, other artists that do exactly the same thing you do, they're pretty free with the information. That people aren't really cutthroat competitive like
Like
people
you
think
would
they
think,
like
yeah.
you would
Yeah,
think.
and there's obviously going to be people out there like that, but find the artists who care about the community and who are nice to you and supportive of you and want you to succeed, and have that discussion with them. Like, what do you charge? What do you think I should charge? What do you think this piece might be worth? I've taken pieces to a gallery before, and the owner of the gallery was like, nope, we're going to go ahead and add a couple $100 to those because you're charging too little.
Yeah,
And they're like, and we're not taking more. We're just adding a couple $100 because you deserve more.
you're right.
And I'm like, oh, okay. Okay. And
Yeah.
I think the point of this podcast, while we're not here to put a dollar amount on it, is
Yeah.
that your art is worth something.
Right.
And you have to realize that your art is worth something, damn it.
Yeah.
It's worth something.
Yeah, and your
you
time
deserve
is worth something. Yeah.
for your creative endeavors. You're not just doing it because you enjoy it. Well, you do enjoy it, hopefully.
Yeah.
It's your life. It's what you're doing. You're devoting part of your life, hours that you will never get back, energy that you will never get back to something, and that deserves something.
Well,
Yes.
and if you're,
Strange.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, this idea too, this idea that because someone enjoys, like you mentioned with the musicians, because, well, you enjoy doing that, right? Then, you should just give it to me for free. That idea comes from an archaic mindset that all of our work should be drudgery and hell. It's like, do we not live in an age and time where we're all pursuing to enjoy the endeavors that we devote our lives to? It's like, that is the movement of our times, is find what you're passionate about and do that. Well, if that's the case, then, I want my accountant to be someone who really enjoys accounting. So that just blows that out of the water that, well, you enjoy it, so you shouldn't get paid for it. And I think some artists do think, well, it is awful fun, so I shouldn't ask very much. And here's what I've been known to do is like, well, I would work, if I were working at this little job, I'd only get $10 an hour, or I'd get $8 an hour, whatever it was. And so I shouldn't charge any more than that for my art. And it's like, well, no, you can't always get paid a great hourly wage. Sometimes there is some of that, but often you can. And so don't think, well, I like doing art, so I'm going to charge half of what I would if I were somewhere else. No, It's like, you deserve a living wage.
Well, and there's also the concept that, and you have to understand that if you're doing commercial work for a client, you're not really doing your own work.
Oh, please know
and
that.
So you are charging them for you to do their art, not your art, because what you would do in your free time is different than what you would end up doing for them. Because when it's all said and done and they come back and say, can you change this, this, and this, and it's like really kind of offensive to you, then you don't want to make those changes, but because they're paying you, you do make those changes. Well, that's not your creation. It's really their creation. It's really something they wanted. And so you're charging for your time to do their artwork. And when you're doing that, then it's worth charging more for.
Yeah.
Because they intruded upon your art space, And so it should be cost them.
You have skills that they don't have.
Exactly. They are renting your skills.
Yeah.
Yes.
Just like I could go to Home Depot and rent a tool to do a project, they are renting your skill. And now there's going to be people who pay you and say, hey, I trust your work and I trust your inspiration, and I know the way you work. Do what you want with it. The way you do it is going to be best.
And those people are going to be few and far between.
And those people are renting.
Unless you're charging them, then those people are more often than you think if you're charging enough.
And those people are renting your creativity. They're not just renting your skills because they're not in charge of it. They're going, you do what you want. And therefore, it is kind of more your thing in that aspect. I mean, it's never fully your thing if someone else is asking for it.
Sure.
But it's more your thing.
You have a lot more creative freedom in those projects. And I guarantee you those projects come from clients who are willing to pay more.
Yeah.
And that
there are some who will come along if you're charging a little and they'll say just do whatever you want. And I love those clients, but quite frankly, it seems to me that, at least my experience, is that when you charge a good price for something, people respect you as an artist, and they'll say, you just have creative freedom and do what you do. But if you don't charge enough, then all of a sudden they become the creative person. They become the artist or something, and you're just become a tool or something. I don't know.
And it's just as important to have the conversation about what you're doing, what the project is. Like, do you want me to just do whatever I want with this, to have my own dream and inspiration for this? Or do you have some things that you want to happen here? Make sure you lay that out before you start the project, or to even say you're going to do the project. Just like you would say, how much are you paying me for this? How much do you expect? These are the conversations you need to have. Don't just say yes to things until you've had those discussions and you know if they're renting your skills or they're renting your creativity. Who's in charge of that? You have to know those things before you say yes.
Well, and on this topic, since we're talking about this, communication is very important in the client creative person scenario. You really want to nail down what the client is wanting and what they're expecting. And if they can provide examples of styles or whatever they're looking for, color, I don't know, whatever. The more information you can get from them, the better. Some clients are terrible. They don't know anything. They refuse to use their heads or their imagination.
And unfortunately, those are the ones who are going to come back with 1,000 notes once you
That's
do
exactly right. Yeah. And so that's why you want to nail it down. You want to keep the line of communication open so that you know exactly what they're wanting and what they're expecting. And I had one client who I ended up not finishing the deal with, who would not tell me anything. And when it was all said and done, and the one thing that he did tell me was exactly what he wanted. The one thing he told me he did not want, it turns out, is exactly what he wanted. And he was a terrible human being as far as I'm concerned. But probably not a terrible human being, but a terrible communicator. He was a terrible communicator, that is for sure. And I think that he had some preconceived ideas about who I was, and just sort of shut down the communication, wouldn't tell me anything. And so that job ended up being crap. and I didn't end up getting paid for that.
You stayed up all night on a weekend, last minute, doing it just because it was one of those, things where you're like, I'll help him out.
And there again, it was one of those situations where I need this tomorrow? Yeah, I need this really fast and blah, blah, blah. But he wouldn't tell me exactly what he was wanting.
Don't take those jobs.
You think that those are going to be fine or quick turnaround or whatever, but I'd never dealt with this person before, so it was a bad idea for me to do a rush job for somebody I'd never worked for before, but it ended up being terrible. But the point being is you want to communicate very clearly what you're doing and what and dig from them what they're expecting. Yeah. And when you do that, then they'll get closer to what they want, and then you have less changes to make. And all this is coming from a graphic designer perspective. But I think it would, in any situation where you're doing work, creative work for someone, I think it's safe to say that communication is important.
Yeah. Well, and we've talked a lot about being used and don't be a victim of usury, because we're talking to creative people, but often a lot of creative people who have had a weird relationship with money or not had a lot of it or not quite known how to price things and stuff like that can often end up being the users themselves. And so don't do that either. Don't be a user. And if you have been a user, it's never too late to turn that around and to not do that anymore. Don't use others.
Yeah. Well, I think just opening people's eyes to it. I think a lot of people just don't even think about it. They don't even realize that it's a thing. Yeah. And so we're just telling people this is a thing. So that thing, watch out for it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Don't be afraid to say no, because that educates people, and tell them why. Be like, no, that's a little bit too much work. It's really difficult. A lot of people I know would never have assumed, well, they might have assumed, but when I was doing wedding photography, that's a really tough job. You are stressed out for the whole duration of the wedding, trying to get all the perfect shots. And then, sure, you worked, 3 hours, or as it was on one wedding that I did, 12 hours doing shots. You spend weeks after that editing them and trying to make them look good for the people.
Right.
And then putting them together and trying to present them to them.
They just think you showed up and pushed a button.
Right. And so then people are like, hey, if I give you $100, will you shoot my wedding? And I'm like, no.
Yeah, no.
And so I got tired of telling everyone no, or telling them, I need to charge this much. Eventually, I just got stressed out. I ended up hating it anyways after a year of doing it. And finally was just like, I don't do wedding photography. Yeah. And there was a time where I was like, I'll do wedding. Yeah, sure. But it's going to be like $1,200, which is still like half of what anyone else charges usually. And people just think that's absurd. Yeah, but and then I realized I don't even want to do it. If it's $1,200, you can give me $5,000. I still don't want to shoot your wedding.
Then
wait, I shouldn't be doing this.
Yeah, so then that's not for you.
So now I just tell people, I'll have friends be like, hey, will you shoot my wedding? I know you did this person's wedding. I'm like, I know I did that person's wedding too. I'm out of that game. It's over.
Yeah. Well, I don't do ceremonies anymore. Either.
But it's good to let your friends know when they ask, or let whoever know why you're charging the amount you're charging, how much work goes into it, how much it makes you suffer, basically, because people just think, oh, you enjoy taking pictures, show up at my wedding and take some pictures. Yeah, I enjoy taking pictures, but that's stressful. That's a lot of work.
Yeah. Well, and the truth is, most people asking for wedding pictures have an expectation, and it's going to be a high.
Yeah, and they'll say they don't. Yeah. Oh, it's just going to be casual, blah blah blah. But bullshit.
Yeah. Well,
when they see the pictures, they have expectations.
Yeah, and make sure you talk to everyone involved in that wedding if you're going to be judging whose expectations. Don't just talk to the groom and be like, hey, do you have expectations? Nah, bro, I'm good. And then the bride comes in and bites your head off. Or even the bride's like, no, it's fine. And then the mother-in-law comes in and goes, what the hell did you do to my daughter's wedding?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. So usury sucks.
So don't get used. Don't be a user. Realize that your art is worth something. It's worth something. And probably more than you think it is.
Right.
And the artists around you, their art's worth something and probably more than you think it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
And don't feel bad about educating people. I mean, just do it with a smile on your face. Oh my gosh, do you know how long that takes? No, I don't think I'm going to do that
It's
one.
okay to say no. Just explain why.
Yeah. Thanks for listening today. Check us out at HancockCreativeShop.com, Etsy.com/shop/Hancock Creative Shop. And thank you to Gabriel Knight for the music. You can hear more of his tunes at GabrielKnight.bandcamp.com. And special thanks to Vinton Bain at Graphocast.com for making all the recording magic happen and being a voice of reason on this podcast.
This has been a Graphomania production. If you would like to hear more podcasts, go to graphocast.com, GRAPHOCAST.com. Follow us on Twitter at Graphocast and like the Graphomania page on Facebook for news and updates.